So, this UCAT presentation is going to be taking you through your UCAT journey. We're going to be covering what the UCAT is, going through registration and booking information, looking at UCAT preparation and how to prepare, looking at subtest content, the scoring, and the results of the test. So, it's a lot of information to take in all at once. But again, we are recording this webinar and the presentation is available with or without voiceover for download on our website. And the website address is at the bottom of the slides there, so you can go back and look at any information that you might forget. So firstly, what is the UCAT? The UCAT, or the University Clinical Aptitude Test, is an admissions test that was developed to help universities achieve a greater fairness in selection by helping them make choices amongst many highly qualified applicants to medical and dental schools. So it assesses a range of mental abilities. So it's different to your school exams because instead of focusing on academic knowledge, the UCAT tests a range of cognitive skills, attitudes, and professional behaviours, which our universities have decided are important for success as medical or dental students. It's a multiple choice computer-based test and it's sat at your nearest Pearson VUE test centre. So I'll go into a little bit more about that on the next slide. It takes just under 2 hours to complete, and universities will use your UCAT results alongside other selection criteria such as academic grades, interviews, and your personal statements to decide which applicants to make offers to. So on this map here, you can see an overview of our test centres in Scotland. We also have test centres throughout the world and in the UK. So if you're in a remote area of Scotland, you can see that we have some coverage in the Highlands and Islands. And we've got a QR code link there to our test centre locator, which is also on our website. So you can find the test centre that's most convenient for you. If you are struggling to find a test centre, then you can get in contact with our dedicated customer service team and they can help advise you on that. So you might be thinking, why do I have to sit the UCAT alongside already doing really difficult exams to get into university in medical or dental school in the first place? Well, imagine that you are an admissions lead at one of our medical or dental schools and you want to select the applicants that demonstrate the skills that are important for the course and to be able to cope with the demands of the profession. You've got thousands of applicants, all with the top grades in school, all with strong personal statements. So you need something to be able to differentiate between candidates and consider them as an applicant. So the UCAT provides this additional measure to help universities consider applicants. So universities might consider UCAT scores differently in different situations. So, for example, if you're eligible for a UCAT bursary, which I'll go into later, then you might be eligible for some consideration because of that. So I'll explain a bit more about that as we go through this presentation. All of the universities on this slide require the UCAT as part of their entry requirements for selected medicine or dentistry courses. So you can see there I've highlighted the Scottish universities in bold for you, but if you're applying to any of these universities, you will need to sit the UCAT in the same year you apply through UCAS. So if you're applying for the 2026 entry, you will need to sit your UCAT this summer to be considered for entry. So you can see the full list of these universities alongside the course codes that require UCAT on our website. On this slide, you can see a timeline of important dates, and it's really important that you are aware of these because we don't make any exceptions to our deadlines. So our deadlines are hard deadlines, so make sure you set reminders in your phone or whatever helps you to not miss those deadlines. So account creation already opened. in May, and some of you might have been really organised and already created your UCAT account, and that's great. Applications for access arrangements and our bursary scheme are also already open. So if you haven't created your account, that's the first thing you need to do. That provides you with your UCAT candidate ID, which is required to book your test. So test booking opened this morning. So we've been very, very busy today because we've had a lot of really organised candidates booking their test already, which is excellent, but it does make us very busy. So booking is open from now until the 19th of September. You must sit your test within the testing window, and that runs from the 7th of July to the 26th of September. So you can choose the test centre time and date that is most convenient for you within that testing window, but you can only sit the test once. So lots of candidates ask us when the best time to take the test is. It's entirely personal, it's up to you. So some candidates prefer to wait until their school exams are out the way. Some prefer to sit it at the end of the summer holidays so they can spend the summer preparing. It's about what's most convenient for you. However, what we do say is consider booking a test date earlier in the testing window because we do permit free reschedules up until 24 hours before your test. So if you left it until the last week, say you book your test on the last day of testing, and then something happens and you can't attend your test, you might not be able to rebook your test within the testing window. So give yourself a buffer, book an earlier test date, and then if you can't make your appointment, perhaps you get ill or for whatever reason you can't attend it, you can reschedule until a later date and still get your UCAT sat so you can apply to university. The fee for taking the test in the UK is £70, and for outside the UK, it's £115. However, that being said, we do have a full fee bursary available to UK candidates from low income households. So you can see the eligibility criteria on the left there. And if you can evidence one of those, then you may be eligible for a UCAT bursary. So that is in the form of a voucher, which covers the full test fee. So when you go and book your test, you can essentially test for free. So if you are eligible for a bursary, I'd really encourage applying for one because then you don't have to pay for the test and your application will also receive a bursary flag, which is a good thing because some universities may consider the bursary flag as a widening access criteria. So you may be eligible for things like contextual offers. So the universities will know you've had a bursary, but it won't be a detriment to your application. If anything, it will help your application to university. Again, like your school exams, if you are entitled to access arrangements like extra time or rest breaks, you may be entitled to access arrangements when sitting the UCAT. What's really important to note is that we can't add extra time or rest breaks to a standard UCAT appointment, so these have got to be approved before you book your test. So details on how to apply and eligibility are all available on our website. One thing I would say is make sure you check the evidence requirements really carefully because understandably we have quite strict evidence requirements. So if you check that you meet them, it's a relatively straightforward process and we can get those in place for you ready for when you book your test. So, how do you prepare for a test of aptitude rather than academic knowledge? Well, preparation is still vital, and most of our high performing candidates spend around 25 to 30 hours preparing for their UCAT, and they tend to start at least 6 weeks before their test day. Again, this is very personal to you, but I would say take a little and often approach because it's not the kind of test you can really cram for. Um, so there is a preparation plan and a preparation calendar available on our website, and these help you map out your preparation in a way that works for you ahead of your test day. The best way to prepare for the test is using the official materials on our website. So we've got the preparation plans, which I mentioned, question tutorials, which go through useful strategies on how to answer each of the question types, question banks, and fully timed practice tests. So you'll come across lots and lots of commercial companies offering paid for resources or tutoring for the UCAT, and it's really not necessary to spend any money on these. All of our resources are made by the same people who develop the live UCAT, so they'll be most representative of the test you're going to sit. So I always say that if you're preparing for your school exams and you use a past paper from a different exam board, it might give you a kind of skewed representation of how you're going to perform in the test of the correct exam board. So just be aware that we don't endorse any commercial preparation materials, and the official ones on the UCAT website are the ones that we've quality checked. So there's over 1,400 questions to help you prepare, and that's more than enough to sufficiently prepare for the test. And the best thing about them is they're all free of charge, so you can go on and access those. Well, just go back. We've also got lots of other information about what to expect on test day, because it is a little bit different to sitting a test in school. Um, you sit it in the test centre and it's a computer-based exam. So helping yourself, like familiarising yourself with what to expect, can really help ease those test day nerves. We also say that it's a good idea to check the test rules and ID policy ahead of your test day so that you're really prepared with how things are going to go on that test day itself. So here you've got a screenshot of our website where you can find our preparation resources. So as you can see that you've got the preparation plan, the tour tutorial, question banks, practice tests, and also lots of useful advice from high performing candidates in previous years. So now we've given an overview of the UCAT, we're going to look at each subtest in a bit more detail and have a look at what the questions look like. So again, as I mentioned, we've got question tutorials on our website, and those provide really detailed strategies for how to approach each subtest and each type of question. So I'd really recommend working your way through those. The UCAT has 4 subtests. We've got 3 cognitive subtests, which are verbal reasoning, decision making, and quantitative reasoning, and then there's the situational judgment test. One thing to note is that ahead of 2025 testing, we've withdrawn abstract reasoning from the test. So you might have heard previous candidates refer to abstract reasoning. You don't need to worry about this. You've got one less subtest to think about that is not part of the UCAT anymore. So kind of ignore any references to abstract reasoning. So the first subtest is verbal reasoning. And in this subtest, you're required to use your critical reasoning skills to draw conclusions quickly from information that's presented in passages of text. So you've got 22 minutes to answer 44 questions, and this is in the form of 11 passages of text, which are each linked to 4 questions. So the timing is designed to be challenging in this subtest, and speed reading skills are really quite important. So lots of candidates say doing things like reading newspaper articles to practice pulling out those key facts quickly is really useful as part of their preparation. So you don't need any prior knowledge to answer these questions. They're designed to be answered based on the information in the passage. So on the next slide, I'm going to show you a verbal reasoning question. I don't expect you to try and read the passage and answer it today, purely because a lot of you might be on mobile devices and it'll be too small. It's kind of to show you the layout and the format of the question. So here is an example of a verbal reasoning question. On the left, you've got your passage of text, and on the right, you've got your answer options. As I've said before, all of the all of the questions in the UCAT are multiple choice. So you've got your range of options to choose from there. In the top left, you can see that you've got an explain answer button, and this is in all of our practice materials. And if you click that explain answer button, you're given the answer, the correct answer, and the rationale behind that answer. So this is a really useful tool to help you understand how the different answers are reached in the UCAT. So you can use that as well as part of your preparation. The next subtest is decision making, and this assesses your ability to apply logic to reach decisions or conclusions, evaluate arguments, and analyze statistical information. So there's lots of different question types in this subtest, such as syllogisms and Venn diagrams. So although you don't need specific mathematical or logical reasoning terminology, we do say if you're not familiar with Venn diagrams, perhaps go back and revise those from when you did those in school. In this subtest, you're provided with an on-screen basic calculator, and you'll also be provided in the test with an A4 laminated notebook and pen for note taking. So some candidates find it really useful to draw out information in tables or make notes to help them answer these questions. You've got 37 minutes in this subtest, and you've got 35 questions to answer. So again, I'm not expecting you to answer this today. It's to show you the format of the question. So this question is a syllogism example, and syllogisms are statements which involve different propositions, allowing you to use your reasoning skills to draw conclusions. So in this question, you're required to make sense of the statement at the top and then decide if each of the conclusions follow, and you have to drag the yes or no to the correct to the box. So these questions feel really complicated at first, but the more you do of them, the better you become at learning how to answer them. And there's lots of examples on our website for you to work through, and you do get more used to answering them. The third subtest is quantitative reasoning. And in this subtest, all the questions are associated with numerical data, which is presented in formats such as tables, graphs, or charts. The focus of this subtest is more on problem solving than mathematical ability. But we would say if you feel a little bit unfamiliar with kind of your high school level maths, to perhaps go back and revise that. So we say to be familiar with things like ratios, fractions, percentages, and brush up on your mental math skills, as this might help save you time in this test. You're also provided with, again, with the on-screen basic calculator, and you've got your A4 laminated notebook and pen for note taking. So lots of candidates say using a combination of their mental maths and that note taking and the calculator helps them to answer these questions really efficiently. You've got 26 minutes to answer 36 questions in this subtest. And here is an example of a quantitative reasoning question. So you can see you're required to use the information presented in the table to do some calculations to arrive at the correct answer. Some candidates find strategies like eliminating obviously incorrect answers or using rounding to first come to an estimate helps them to answer these questions really efficiently. And finally, we've got the situational judgment test, or SJT. So in this subtest, you've got 26 minutes to answer 69 questions, but this subtest is less time sensitive than the other ones. So in this subtest, you're presented with various scenarios and then questions associated with each scenario. And these kind of scenarios are ones that you're likely to encounter as a medical or dental student or within an educational setting. You don't require any medical or dental procedural knowledge, but we do say if you read the General Medical Council guidelines on good medical practice, this describes the kind of professional values and behaviours that the GMC expect from any doctor registered with them. So this provides a kind of useful perspective on how to answer these types of questions. So here's your example of a situational judgment question. You've got your scenario on the left, and then you're asked to rate how appropriate each of Arnold's responses are. And you've got one of the responses on the right, and you have to rate whether it's a very appropriate thing to do, appropriate, inappropriate, or a very inappropriate thing to do. And again, if you use that explain answer button, it displays the rationale behind it, so you can really get used to the correct way of thinking to answer these questions. So the test is marked on the number of correct answers. There's no negative marking in the UCAT. So for verbal reasoning, decision making, and quantitative reasoning, you receive a scaled score which ranges from 300 to 900, which results in a total score of 900 to 2,700. And then in the situational judgment test, it's a little bit different. You get your score expressed in a banding, which ranges from bands 1 to 4, with 1 being the highest banding. So these results are available on the day of your test from the test centre, and you can also see them within 24 hours in your Pearson VUE account. We also publish preliminary mean scores and final mean scores after testing ends alongside a percentile lookup tool. So this is a really useful tool to compare how well you've performed against other candidates in the same test cycle. So particularly with the changes this year, it's not always possible to compare your performance to previous years. So that's really useful to see how you're performing against candidates who have tested in 2025. If you take one thing away from this presentation, I'd say it's to check how universities use your result to avoid wasting your UCAS application. So universities use the UCAT in lots of different ways in selection. So some might have a ranking system where they rank results, others apply a threshold score. So I'd say aim to do as well as you can on the UCAT, and then check how universities are going to consider your score in selection, because if they do have a threshold score and you don't meet that, then you don't want to waste one of your UCAS application choices applying to that university. Um, so just check how they use it. It's different for every university, and that information should be available on their websites. And if you don't know, then ask the university and they'll be able to tell you how they're going to consider your result in selection. So a question we get asked a lot is, what is a good UCAT score? And unfortunately, there's no one size fits all answer because universities consider them all differently. So in general, the better you do, the more likely you are to be considered. But if you don't do as well as you hoped, then you do have options. So it's not, if you don't do as well as you hoped, you can still apply to university. So just check how those universities are using UCAT results as part of your application. So we deliver your result directly to your chosen UK universities in early November. So you apply through UCAS and we deliver your results, so you don't need to do anything. So what have we got to do? What have you got to do now? First, if you haven't already, make your UCAT account, then get your test booked. Then prepare for test day using those resources on our website. Sit your test, do as well as you can, and then you receive your result. Check how universities are going to consider that in selection, and then apply through UCAS, and we do the rest for you. So thank you for listening to all of that information. If you missed any of it, it is available on our website, and there's the link there. And I would recommend also giving us a follow on Instagram, because we post lots of updates and candidate advice and even more practice questions on our Instagram channel. So give us a follow on there. And now I'm going to hand over to Your Med Future. They are primarily focused on medicine applications. So if you're thinking about applying for dentistry, then this is more medicine focused, but a lot of the information will still be useful for you. So I'll hand over to them and then we'll have some questions.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Zoe. That was really excellent, really informative. So we're just going to bring up our slides, but we're really delighted to join today's webinar. So thank you, Kat, for the invite. So we're here from NHS Education for Scotland, and we're here to let you know about our brand new, very brand new, Euromed Future Hub, which actually just went live yesterday. You'll see the URL on the screen there if you want to bring that up at any point. But it is essentially a new set of pages hosted within our NHS Scotland Careers website. And it's been designed to provide a supportive starting point for any individual considering applying to a Scottish medical school. So I guess why did we develop the hub? Well, it was in recognition of the fact that whilst there is a wealth of information out there already about the journey to medical school, I think at times that information can be quite overwhelming and it can be quite fragmented. So we're really excited to have developed this and share this brand new hub, which we hope consolidates and signposts to a range of useful information and resources. And it's designed to be clear, accessible, and helpful to you as you take your next steps to studying medicine in Scotland. So in summary, what can Euromed Future help you with? Well, you'll find information to guide you every step of the way, with information about everything from what makes a good doctor to medical school interviews and everything in between. So being a good doctor means more than just having the medical knowledge and skills. It's about having a strong moral compass, empathy, staying true to your values and doing the right thing. So we already mentioned, but we do also link to the GMC's Good Medical Practice Framework. That's a set of professional standards designed to help doctors provide the best possible care for patients and build strong collaborative relationships with colleagues. So within the pages on the hub, you'll find links to that framework alongside a host of other key resources and a helpful overview of the various routes into medical school in Scotland. We have also referenced links to some free outreach support, which may be available to you depending on your location. So really these outreach support activities that we've linked across to are generally led by student societies, can also be led by charities and our own NHS health boards. And they do include activities such as workshops on writing your personal statements, or it could be advice on preparing for your medical school interview. The activities would really vary from being in person to online, but you'll be able to browse through the links at your leisure and see if there might be anything coming up that you could book onto in the near future. And then within the hub, you'll find different tiles outlined, which will point you to the key information that you might want to focus in on. So, for example, do you want an overview of the core values and attributes needed to study medicine and use those to help inform your personal statement? You might want more information about the personal statement itself, including the new format for 2026 and some top tips for personal statement success. Or thinking even further ahead, you might want to know where to go for support with preparing for an interview. Laurie will touch a little bit more on that later. So again, we provide links to some useful resources as well as some videos about each of these aspects of your application, as well as a full application timeline. Laurie, I'll pass to you if that's okay.
Thanks, Lauren. So I guess another thing to be considered in terms of what the website will offer will be, as Zoe touched on earlier, doing your research around which of the 5 schools you're interested in. So thinking about each medical school and what they offer in terms of course type, how long each course takes, what courses and teaching styles are like in each of the 5 universities across Scotland, and obviously what the academic requirements are for study. So really important to understand those, as Zoe had highlighted earlier. And this is really just the start. So we'll continue to work in partnership with the medical schools to developing more content and more insights around journeys from current medical students, but also those who have transitioned into their career. So keep an eye on the site for further developments and ads along your journey and your application process. In terms of thinking about those medical schools, also thinking about what the teaching facilities are like, what's accessible in terms of their reasonable adjustments and offers to you, what's the town and city like, for example, and how easy is it to access accommodation and facilities in the area. So lots of content to consider and read through, and we do link out and consolidate what those 5 medical schools have posted on their site as well, and we're working really closely with them as highlighted. I guess another important aspect of your application journey is thinking about work experience and what work experience can offer you and how that will support you in terms of your application and your journey in terms of reflection and building on those key skills that you would want to talk about during your interview and further beyond that. And what we've tried to do is think about how we can support and facilitate those offers across Scotland, consolidating those into space. So that again will be content that we will develop and build on as we build the site currently, but also thinking about how you use that insight, that learning and that experience, and how you articulate them during your application and onward reflection. Lots of tools linked out in that site as well, that you'll be able to access and develop those skills, but also opportunities to experience any virtual experience offers that are also promoted by the medical schools. So hopefully that will be of useful information to you, and again, importantly, thinking about how you use that to reflect and articulate that in your application. Finally, we are bringing together some content around your personal statement and work experience, thinking about that interview format and really what each medical school will expect from you in the process in which they host and hold their interviews. So we've tried to explain that as well as clearly as possible, and we'll keep that up to date, working again alongside the medical schools to make sure that it's in that one-stop accurate place for easy read, not only for aspiring students, but also for those that are supporting our students and peers in that space. So teachers, NHS staff, careers advisors, all of those key career influencers. We also have the support offer on our hub for those staff members as well. So I guess finally, just to say again, we've already highlighted that there will be content being developed. We're hoping to host more videos as we build on the content and more insights in terms of user journeys. So please reach out if you've got any questions, and we'll try and respond in the chat as best as we can, and certainly welcome any feedback. If anyone's been on the site already, there's an opportunity to share your experience of what you've seen and what you've viewed online. We're most welcome. And we've come to the end, so I'm just going to hand back to Zoe to see if we're going to transition into an opportunity of further questions. Thank you, Zoe.
Thank you both for that. That was really useful. I know Rachel and Helen have been really busy monitoring the chat. So is there any questions that have come through that you want us to address?
There's one question which Laurie or Lauren might be able to pick up. It's a question about medical schools and some taking 6 years to complete and some 5. I don't know if there's some resources that could be helpful around that, and or whether people need to go to specific websites.
Sorry, like my screen had frozen there, apologies. Yes, we have the terms in terms of the undergraduate programs on the site, and so those will be linking directly to each of the 5 medical schools, so making sure that that's accurate of any changes to reflect that journey for the young person. So we encourage you to go and do your own research, because it's hopefully really clear on the site. You'll be able to understand each of the 5 university programs in Scotland from that.
Thanks, Laurie. Zoe, I kind of feel we have covered this, but just to revisit, I think we often get the question about what's a good score. And I know you talked about this, but I think people are still kind of trying to get their heads around what that means and how they can find out about the kind of score that they would need to apply for different places. Do you want to just talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, so because universities all use UCAT in different ways, it's unfortunately I can't give you kind of a one size fits all answer of a score you should aim for. Because also it's considered in conjunction with other things like your performance in school and how well you perform at interview. So no single score kind of guarantees entry to medical or dental school. Um, However, in general, the better you do, the more likely it is that you'll be considered. But if things don't go to plan and you don't do as well as you hoped, um, it doesn't mean that you can't apply. There are still medical schools and dental schools that might consider your result. Um, so, yeah, it's a bit more complicated than just a single score. In terms of finding out how universities use your result, that information should be available on their websites. And I appreciate it's not always that easy to find because it is a complex process. But if you have a specific university in mind and you're unsure how they're going to consider your UCAT score, then contact their admissions team and they'll be able to explain that to you because it does vary between universities. And I think I noticed there was also a question kind of on scoring about an uplift for widening access applicants. Some universities do offer this, yes. So again, if you fall under a widening access criteria, um, which each university will explain what that means and whether you're eligible, then you may be entitled to a uplift in your UCAT score. But again, that varies per university. So please check the websites of the universities that you're wanting to apply to, because they'll be able to give you more specific information on that.
Thanks, Zoe. A couple of questions maybe for Laurie and Lauren. One about somebody asking about volunteering opportunities for under 18s, and they're struggling to find anything in their area, and a sort of similar thing, but somebody who's saying they live remotely and therefore finding work experience is quite challenging, and would that put them at a disadvantage?
I think it's quite a difficult one to answer because it would be depending on the areas, I guess, in terms of the offer from your local NHS board. Hopefully you're familiar with each of the boards in Scotland, and your local one, there will be on each of the NHS Scotland websites, there is a link to the volunteer manager and the volunteering programme. I'm aware that they do host volunteers under the age of 18, so hopefully that's helpful. I guess in terms of access to specific work experience, again, linking in with your local board and utilising their local website. They advertise work experience programmes, and predominantly for medicine, there is quite a vast range of careers, activity and support offered from each board independently. So again, it's quite difficult to answer as a Once for Scotland offer because it could vary in terms of those offers depending on regional activity. But happy to pick up any queries through the site as well, and we can redirect as appropriate.
Thanks,
Laurie. That's
I would
useful.
just, can I just very quickly add, Rachel, sorry, as well, for that individual who posted that question, it might be a useful starting point for you just to, on our site, just to zone in on the work experience insights section, because that does include some further information about volunteering specifically. And there's a few links to other sites that you might be able to find opportunities on as well. And that's where Laurie also mentioned the virtual work experience, particularly for those living in more rural areas, that might be a good other way to gain some experience as well. Sorry, Rachel, to cut in.
That's okay. Just a few that I can probably questions I'm just going to pick up because I think they have come up. So there've been a few questions around how you can kind of compare your result with previous years because we've changed the test this year. There's a section of our website under the results tab where we have previous year's test statistics, and we are presenting those as if abstract reasoning wasn't in the test in previous years. So you should be able to get a sense of what average scores have looked like over previous years. And Zoe's just put that in the chat, which is very helpful. Thank you. And a question from somebody about whether Zoe mentioned that the sections are separately timed. And whether they move on. So they do. The once you've used up the amount of time that you have in a specific subtest, you'll be moved automatically on to the introduction screens for the next subtest. So you can't use unused time in one subtest for another one, but you also won't run over. I'm just having a scan down to see if there's any others I can pick off. So somebody's asked about, is it normal not to have time to complete all questions in the test? Yes, it is completely normal. It is a timing is a big challenge in this test, and significant numbers of our candidates do not reach all the questions in each of the subtests. We do advise candidates though that you kind of need a strategy where you hopefully will get towards the end of the subtest. It is in your interest to have keyed an answer for each question, even if you've not had a huge amount of time to consider that as you've moved through. So we would advise candidates whenever they can to try and get to the end of the subtests.
I say just on that as well, Rachel, something I forgot to mention is that there are kind of various tools that you can use in the test. So on the test tools page on our website, it goes through various keyboard shortcuts, which can help you navigate the test really quickly. So it's worth looking into kind of the functionality of the test and how you navigate it, because that will save you time on the test day, kind of working out how it all works. And you can also practice using the on-screen calculator. And there's also a flag for review function. If you're not sure of an answer and want to come back to it later, then you can flag questions for review. So it's worth having a look at that because that can help you with some of the timing. But the timing is challenging.
Thanks, Zoe. There's a question about the quantitative reasoning section and somebody asking if you'd need knowledge of different mathematical formulas. These would normally be, if there were formulas involved, they'd normally be included in the question. As Zoe mentioned, the kind of maths that you need in order to complete quantitative reasoning is more kind of straightforward calculation, so being able to do percentages, but not necessarily being able to answer to use specific or complicated formula. And somebody's asked about note taking in the test. So do you want to pick that up? I know you've mentioned that, but there have been a few questions about how many noteboards you get and just information.
Yeah,
so this person, sorry, is just asking about whether you can do that in all sections or not.
Yeah, so you'll be provided in the test centre with, we call it an A4 laminated notebook, but it's like a A4 laminated piece of paper and a whiteboard pen for taking notes. And correct me if I'm wrong, Rachel, but I believe if you need a new one, you can put your hand up to request one. And you can use that in all of the subtests for note taking. It just tends to be that candidates find it more useful to take notes in decision making and quantitative reasoning. But if you need to take notes in the other subtests, then you can.
Thanks, Zoe. Do you want to just pick up? There's somebody asking about if they get extra time in exams, can they get extra time in the UCAT?
Yes, so we do have things like extra time available. So I can't comment on your specific application, but if you are eligible in school for extra time, it's likely that you'll be eligible for extra time in the UCAT. So I'd say check the evidence requirements. It's usually, if you're in school, a letter from your school confirming what you're entitled to, why you're entitled to it, and on what basis. And then you need to make an access arrangements application and upload your evidence with that. And then we'll process that for you. If you're not quite sure if your evidence is acceptable or you're not quite sure if you're eligible, I'd say make an application, and then if it gets initially rejected, you'll have the opportunity to come back to us with kind of more evidence to support that. So if you think you might qualify for extra time, then make an access arrangements application because you're likely qualifying the UCAT.
Thanks, Zoe. Just to pick up on a question somebody's asked about gaps between the sections in the test. So there is a break between each of our sections. This is usually 1.5 minutes, but the break between decision making and quantitative reasoning is now 2 minutes. That's for a standard time test. And you can't pick the order in which you do the sections. That is set for you. So as Zoe described, all our candidates sit verbal reasoning, decision making, quantitative reasoning, and then the test of situational judgment. I'm sure there was another one I was going to. And somebody's asked about any way you can practice using the online calculator without doing a fully timed practice test. So that's an online calculator is also included in each of our sets of question banks, including the quantitative reasoning question banks where you're more likely to be using it. So they're not timed, so you can use that as an opportunity to become familiar with the calculator. And we do suggest, using those question banks not only to familiarize yourself with the test, but also with the functionality. So how the calculator works, how you move between questions, how you maybe use your review screen. So lots of opportunities there. I am just scanning down to see whether so somebody just following on from that, would you be allowed to bring in a physical calculator? We wouldn't allow candidates to do that. They're expected to use the calculator that's built into the test. I'm mindful of time, Zoe. Do you think we've covered? I think we've covered most of the main questions. There are still some open, but
Yeah, I think there's
try and respond to those individually. But
yeah, I think the majority of questions kind of fall under the same groups of questions. In terms of like acceptance of different school grades for universities, you'd have to check with the universities themselves, I'm afraid. If it's for Scottish universities, check out the Your Med Future website because that will help you with that. But I'm unsure about other elements of the application. But I think most of the questions we can probably answer by typing them. So I think we'll end the kind of formal section of this webinar now and try and go through and answer any questions that are still open. But thank you everyone for attending this evening and taking time out of your evening. And I hope you found it really useful. And good luck with your UCAT and your medical and dental school applications.